Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to panel discussion SETA is organizing in partnership with Hasan Kalyoncu University. The title of our panel discussion is Turkey-Greece Summit, Sailing Through a Positive Agenda. I have a host of very distinguished speakers to discuss this issue. Retired Ambassador Uluç Özülker, Dr. Murat Aslan from Hasan Kalyoncu University, Sean Mathews, journalist working for Middle East Eye. Thank you very much for coming. Welcome. After a relatively thorny period in Turkey-Greece relations, thankfully, since the earthquakes that hit Turkey in February this year, now both countries are in a phase of normalizing its relations. And President Erdogan of Turkey is set to visit the country, Greece, tomorrow. And this positive atmosphere and its implications are important for both countries' neighborly relations, but for their national interests too. So to shed more light on this, I would like to start with our distinguished speakers. And our first speaker will be retired Ambassador Uluç Özülker. Uluç Özülker served in many capitals, including Paris and Tripoli, Libya. But at the same time, he also served as permanent representatives in OECD and the European Union. So, retired Ambassador Uluç Özülker, welcome again. I would like to hear your thoughts and analysis on this positive atmosphere that we are going through in Turkish-Greek bilateral relations, and your expectations, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I congratulate you for having organized this meeting, this panel, because I think that the improvement of relations between our respective countries is something that we should really applaud from the beginning, because we must not forget that we're two neighbors and we're condemned to live together. And the Aegean, as such, is a uniting border for both of us. So instead of quarreling for each other for problems that we cannot solve easily, let's continue to argue in the different fields, and let's exchange our views effectively concerning the solutions that we can bring to them. This is one part of the problem. But on the other hand, if I consider the problem from a more effective and more realistic point of view, unfortunately, our relations between Turkey and Greece are changing. Yeah, they are more sinusoidal than straightforward improving themselves upon time. This is not what's happening actually. For example, I was serving in 1998-1999 period. I was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a deputy. My rank was the third person to serve the country in the ministry at that time. So I was collaborating with a minister who unfortunately passed away later on, Ismail Cem. So we started to discuss among ourselves in the ministry, what are we doing and what are we not doing actually to solve the problems, because fighting with each other without reaching any kind of a solution and the target is away from us, why? And then we reached a conclusion, a very thorough conclusion, saying that there are problematic areas. They need a better and deeper discussions between the two of us. And the more we'll approach and gain confidence concerning each other, solving the problems will be much better and much easier. So then, instead of attacking all those unsolvable problems from the beginning, let's try to settle as much as possible in fields where a solution is less demanding from us than the other important issues that we also need to cover in the long run. So as such, we came together, and as we remember, the two ministers became so friendly that they exchanged visits, and our minister went to Crete, where they participate in a Greek dance as well. And in return, the same occurred in Turkey with the visit of the Greek counterpart. And step by step, for about 8 to 10 years, as long as both parties stayed in power in our respective countries, we could really make good progress, and step by step we could see the rapprochement that we were about to create, in the confidence that we would elaborate between our two countries in the short run. So everything was going quite well. But with the change of governments, everything is changing, unfortunately. Now, I shall be a little bit concrete in that respect. I think that if we want to solve our problems, we need to become more friendly than ever between the two of us. And without expecting the others to support our thesis, which then make everything unsolvable. Okay, Greece is a member country in the European Union, true. But this does not mean that the problems that we have between Turkey and Greece, they need the coverage from that side, and with to make use of the Greek veto to stop the Turkish entering in the European Union. Is it really in favor of solving the problems, or is it putting both the countries away from each other and making the problems unsolvable to some extent? So the support of the European Union in a one-sided matter seems not to be constructive, but instead it's creating many other problems, and they are putting us away from each other from every point of view. The second aspect in that respect is the attitude of the United States of America, unfortunately. The Aegean, Black Sea, and whatever you call them, the Mediterranean, there are seas, and it's under our governance that they can exist and they should exist. For example, when I look actually the Greek positions concerning the opening of new bases, etc., so against whom all these are created, I'm asking myself. It's not Turkey, 100% sure that it's not Turkey. It seems as if the Americans are not in good terms with the Russians, and with the creation of all these bases, they're taking advantage of the demands of Greece from them. They are creating new problematic areas in the Aegean as much as in our vicinity. So let's come together face to face and let's be honest with each other. If Ismail Cem could have done it, together with its counterparts in the past. Why shouldn't we do it today? And the opening of our president, as you know, I mean, the speeches that they were making concerning our relations with Greece or with Turkey from the Greek side, they went so far sometimes that in both countries we started speaking of a war risk, etc. I mean, this is nonsense. This is nonsense. The peace is much better to solve than the fighting between the countries cannot solve anything. Now, the atmosphere in that context is extremely useful and extremely favorable to start to try to settle all those problems with which we're facing with since times. And when you do that, let's separate them into two again, as we have done with in 1999 under the reign of our Ismail Cem minister. What we have done, for example, tourism. All the islands, the Greek islands, I'm going there. I live in Bodrum for 4 months in summer, and every time I return, I go to one of the Greek islands, and I love it. I love it. But unfortunately, thanks to this visa regimes, etc., the Turks cannot go. I mean, they're forbidden. What does this mean? And for example, the Greek government has made a step forward lately, saying that for those who will be visiting the islands, the problem will not exist, the visa regime. So maybe it's for a limited period, but still the Turks can go to the islands to visit them and return the same day or stay there for a few days. And economically, it's very important and very useful for Greece as well, for example, and vice versa, the same. So commerce, the trade, why not? And there are many fields in this context. And instead of speaking of military struggle and of making our fleets, our air forces, etc., stronger, and what will be the purpose and what will be the usefulness for them afterwards? So I return back also to as you know, our independence war in Turkey. I mean, it was between Turkey and Greece, and at that time, Venizelos was responsible for the starting of the war and this, let's say, the invasion from the beginning in Anatolia. But don't forget that in 1932, the same Venizelos proposed that the peace reward, internationally speaking, goes to Atatürk. It's an not important, more than important step that from the Greek side Venizelos taken. And it was not accepted because it was prior to a Second World War time, etc. The conditions were different. But this approach itself is so important. And why are we not speaking of a rapprochement again, the same way? Let's believe in each other. Let's have more confidence with each other in every field. And start with the best and the easiest to enter after the confidence is built step by step. Then let's go to the others problems that we're facing with. Nobody in Turkey is looking to Greece as an enemy, but a partner with whom we could have good relations, and not only good, but also serving the interests of each other as well. But for nothing, for no reason, we are actually feeling as if when I look into it through the declarations that I read from both sides, unfortunately, the sentiment, the feeling that I reach at is that goes negative this time.
Mm-hmm.
So let's put them aside. Let's put them behind us. And with the occasion that we have before us after the meeting of the two leaders of our countries, politically and economically speaking, there are a lot that we can do. We already have the basic elements, the institutions that we have already created in Turkey and in Greece through different meetings. Let's continue, let's deepen them, and let's assure that peace should be from our side for both of us, and not this talkativeness which seems to be more, how would I say, trouble creating than solution making process. So this is what I want to share. And simply, I finish with one word. Thank you very much for organizing the meeting, the panel, first of all, because it is at, I mean, the two leaders will meet very soon, and this will maybe show everybody that we are not approaching things from our side neither as enemy-making processes, but more trying to solve politically, economically, but 100% peacefully, and try to soften a little bit our attitudes and have a new attitude and mind-making in the coming days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. There are a lot of important points. You ended with a very positive note. You called on both parties to engage in more dialogue and confidence building. Let's be closer friends than ever in order to solve the problems, and let's not delve into the unsolvable, intractable issues. Rather, let's focus on the easiest and strongest aspect of this relationship to capitalize on this, let's say, rapprochement, and let's work towards a peaceful, let's say, working relationship. And of course, especially the references towards the to the periods under Ismail Jam's foreign ministry and his counterparts. That was a very cordial period in bilateral relations. And at the same time, there is also a very stark historical precedent during Venizelos's premiership. The same person who maybe let's say spearheaded the invasion, but at the same time he was the one who extended his hand towards Atatürk for a peaceful period, and that was followed by a peaceful period in 1930s. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Now I would like to turn to Dr. Constantinos Filis. Dr. Constantinos Filis, you had technical issues. Hopefully they are over now. We will be able
not anymore.
Great. Thank you for coming. Constantinos Filis is a professor at the American College of Greece, And now, Dr. Constantinos Filis, we would like to hear your thoughts on this current positive atmosphere in Turkish-Greek relations, especially in the light of the Leaders' Summit. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and once again, thanks to my good friend Murat for the kind invitation. He's always a pioneer in organizing events, similar events, ahead of meetings and I would say some turning points, maybe even in bilateral relations. I agree. At first, I have to correct the ambassador. It was not Venizelos, but it was mainly the anti-Venizelos forces that triggered and initiated the attack in Asia Minor. So Venizelos, as he very well knows, was a very modest politician, a very moderate personality. But of course, it is true that back then in Greece, and since actually I would say 12, but the peak was in 1915 during World War I, the Great War. There was an internal strife in Greece between the pro-Venizelos and the anti-Venizelos forces, and that, of course, led to the Asia Minor catastrophe as we consider it on our side. Now, I agree with almost everything that has been said from the ambassador. Only a few points, supplementary, I would say, to his remarks. First of all, we need to make it clear that Greece and Turkey are not in a dialogue right now. Rather, an effort is being made to consolidate de-escalation, to transform it into normalization, and in turn, to highlight issues like those on the positive agenda. And you know that tomorrow some agreements are going to be signed, important agreements. One of them being on migration, where the two sides have an interest. It has been very strange to me that the two sides did not seek in the past common denominators in migration, although it seems that in that particular issue, they both have more in common than they have with the European Union, despite the fact that we are members of the European Union. Just a note on that. Second, we have this, we moved ahead, or we are going to move ahead with the positive agenda. And if there is de-escalation, then a better climate can be created. This better climate could lead to a dialogue under better conditions. You cannot have a dialogue under tension, under a tense atmosphere. These are the steps we have to follow. There is a roadmap, and I insisted from the very beginning, even during the years of crisis between the two sides, and it was actually between 2019 and 2022, it was a very harsh period with inflammatory rhetoric, with actions on the ground that were not only problematic, but they just were adding fuel on bilateral ties. Of course, I will support. That is my view, actually, that it is the Turkish side to blame. But of course, you know, I will hear the counter arguments from my colleagues from Turkey, and you know, I'm here to have a constructive dialogue. But we couldn't have a dialogue between 2019 and 2023 for a number of reasons. Now the atmosphere is better. Now there is a roadmap. So I insisted from the very beginning that we needed a roadmap. Apart from the positive fact that on the 7th of December, that is actually tomorrow, there will have been 3 Mitsotakis-Erdogan meetings within the past 5 months. So since last July. There hasn't been any other substantial progress on Greek-Turkish issues. However, the fact that we have managed, both sides, to de-escalate tensions and diffuse them is, for me, of crucial importance. And that's the first step. I agree with the ambassador that for now, we should not delve into issues that divide us, and we know that they divide us today. I don't know if you have already read it. There is an interview by President Erdogan to Kathimerini newspaper, a long interview, very long one. And he, for instance, brings up the issues that Turkey, he is not naming them, but he says that there are lots of issues that we can take in Hague. For me, on the one hand, it is positive that the Turkish side speaks about solving our dispute or disputes, as Turkey claims, in Hague. On the other hand, the Turkish side knows that there are very specific issues that we can discuss and that we can accept Hague's jurisdiction that have nothing to do with our sovereignty. But irrespective of that, in this interview, Mr. Erdogan addresses the Greek Prime Minister by saying, "My friend Kyriakos." I can recall it was 1.5 years ago when he said the famous phrase. It became really famous here in Greece, Mitsotakis yok, and that actually, as you know, had as a result the termination of any dialogue, any communication, actually not dialogue, between the two sides. So it's really useful and it's really encouraging the fact that President Erdogan has changed his tone. If you read the interview, there are issues where you can disagree. But again, as Mitsotakis has said, we can agree that we disagree, but not let these disagreements affect negatively our relations. Besides, we are neighbors. We have many challenges in common, many challenges to tackle. Some of them were raised by the ambassador. I could add, of course, natural disasters, climate crisis. Why, for instance, don't we initiate a campaign or a project, plastic-free Mediterranean, plastic-free Aegean? I mean, there are many initiatives that can be taken by the two sides, not necessarily in what we call the positive agenda, but in what is needed. I mean, it is really necessary for me that we cooperate with our neighbors. Geography is destiny. We can change it. Because of that, we should look into ways of cooperation, ways of collaboration, ways to jointly tackle common challenges. And besides, there is this trend in global affairs nowadays to see countries, neighboring countries, communicating, cooperating, in confronting jointly common challenges and in finding common denominators. For instance, Greece is part of the European Union, at the core of it, in the Eurozone, in NATO. So in principle, it has many more things in common with, let's say, Latvia or Lithuania or Estonia. Is that the case? Or maybe Greece has more things in common and absolutely, and for me, it's for 100% sure that more challenges to jointly tackle with its neighbors. So we should be open-minded on the one hand. On the other hand, if we want to be pragmatic, and I'm going to close with this remark, we have to accept that some of the issues that divide us, they might not be unsolvable, but still they need very fine diplomacy. As the ambassador said, under the Gem Papandreou years, there was this attempt to not only to find some ways to cooperate, or some areas to cooperate, but also, as you probably know, in late 2003, we reached the point where a solution was really close between the two sides. For numerous reasons, it didn't materialize. But I mean, we have proven in the past that we can sit down, negotiate, and try and find a solution. And even if we don't find a solution, we can accept the jurisdiction of a court, that is Hague, to solve our dispute. However, the problem here, and I'm going to close with that, is that, as you all know, Greece has one issue under discussion, that is the delimitation of exclusive economic zone and continental shelf, whereas Turkey has raised other issues as well. We can discuss about that later on, but the key point for me is that the message from President Erdogan in his interview in Kathimerini that was published a few hours ago is that he is visiting Athens with in a positive spirit, and that this moratorium of actions and this moratorium to inflammatory rhetoric will be I don't know whether it will be sustainable, but it seems that both sides have decided to retain that moratorium, which for now is good news, especially given that we are facing, we have two wars in our neighborhood, the one in Ukraine and the other in Gaza. So the last thing we need is a further source of tension, not to say instability, that would have been, of course, any conflict, even if not a military confrontation between two NATO members, two allies, and two neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to stop here.
Thank you, Constantinos. Filis, a number of points I will repeat made by you. You drew attention to the fact that this is not a fully-fledged dialogue, it's just a convergence on a common will on de-escalation and propping up a positive agenda. And there are agreements, important agreements to be signed tomorrow. One of them is about migration. And you argue that both countries are closer to each other, one another, in terms of challenges, then they are closer to their European partners. You argue that a better climate can be created for this development or furthering of this positive atmosphere. You said there is already a roadmap. You mentioned 2019 and 2022 as the period where we lacked a dialogue between two parties. But good news is both sides now are managing or manage to diffuse their tensions. There are many challenges to tackle. There are very good reasons to let's say be in cordial relations with one another. There are natural disasters, climate crisis, to create a plastic-free Mediterranean, as you said. If not for a positive agenda, we need to converge on these things because we need to act them together. And you called for an open-minded and pragmatic approach. And we in the past there are phases, historical phases that both sides proved that they can manage their differences. And also there was a difference between Turkey and Greece in terms of their let's say divergence on whether they are having one issue to be solved at the court in Hague or multiple issues, as Turkish side is arguing. Thank you very much. Now I will move to Dr. Murat Aslan from Hasan Kalyoncu University. Dr. Dr. Murat Aslan is a faculty member at Hasan Kalyoncu University and at the same time a foreign policy researcher at SETA Foundation. Dr. Murat Aslan, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank all participants and accepting invitation. This is really a timely event, not only because of the tomorrow's summit in Greece, but also we know that we are approaching some turning points, major flashpoints, maybe in near term. So we have to review Turkish-Greek relations and be conscious on what both countries should do or should avoid. In this sense, I have drafted my speech in several different categories. The first one is about the perceptions of both. Why? Perception matters, I believe, because you can't avoid it. If you want to solve something, then you have to review the perception and at least come to the least terms of both parties, and by that way you can discuss something. Well, it's a clear fact that in the Greek perception, Turkey is a threat. On the other hand, from the Turkish perspective, Greece is not a threat, and Greece is not priority. We have discussed this issue with Professor Filis and Sean several times. Turkey has a loaded agenda, and believe in me, Greece is not the top priority, but there's another clear reality. It's what once there happens an escalation between Greece and Turkey, it does have impact on the security of the European Union. It does have effect on the solidarity of NATO. And I believe that the third parties will be the ones who gains most, either through defense expenditures, either political maneuvers, or sometimes other means in the region. So that's why I think we have to review the perceptions. This is the first thing I have to delineate right now. Second issue, agendas. If the current status of negotiations is built on positive agenda, that means we have to first mend micro and mezzo level relations, facilitating maybe directly of people-to-people interaction. Why? Because both countries should project exactly what sort of future they are expecting they will face. Because I'm not optimistic what will happen tomorrow or the other year. Right after the outbreak of COVID, natural disasters, wildfires or earthquakes, doesn't matter, or conventional warfare just at the up north of our countries, we have to expect more. And still, we are unable to imagine what they are. In this sense, once we start earlier to discuss the problems and start with the ones that we can resolve easily and build an environment within the frame of win-win policy, and President Erdogan's statement in Katimerini indicates exactly a win-win strategy, then we can start it. I mean, the major problems of today will be marginalized for tomorrow. Spillover effect in this sense is the expected course, I believe. Well, Ambassador Özülker told about the tourism opportunities in tourism, business opportunities, trade, etc. I totally agree. Because people's expectations are not problems in agency or around. On the other hand, people wants to have prosperity, stability, and education, and not be deprived of basic services in the region. Then the states, the leaders, must serve this cause. I mean, not more, I believe. On the other hand, there's one thing, it's really important. We don't have the luxury to leave the worst for the coming generations, but we must discuss what to leave, better or the best. Because my grandfather was in fight with many, and Greek army was one of them. And I don't want to see my grandson experience the same mood. We have to surpass it anymore. I mean, not fighting, but benefiting. That's that much easier. So we have to discuss what we can leave as the best, not better actually, the best for the future generations. So tomorrow's summit, I believe, may be a starting point, and I'm optimistic that. On the other hand, tomorrow we know that there will be 20 agreements at least to be signed. I don't know the number though, at least let me say. And it's a good thing, because then we can have a reference document that we can rely on and move fast. That's a good thing. On the other hand, it's not a secret, the problems on sovereignty, the problems like Cyprus, well, they will be, in conflict resolution, there's a principle, leave the problem to oblivion. Well, that means we are leaving these problems to oblivion for a while, and it's much better. And if, as President Erdogan says in his statement to Katimerini, if a code hawk is an option, then we can use it, no problem. But the issue in here is to agree on a folder that contains exactly details, technical details, like referent treaties or agreements, etc. But it's not that much easier job, by the way. But at least not military, but a code is delineated in the speech. That's a hope, I believe. And I totally agree with Ambassador Özülker regarding peace is much better to everything. Peace is much better to business, to anything. I mean, not conflict, not war, not escalation. And 2020 was maybe one of the worst time we had experienced, and we must have lessons learned from this. We must obstruct it. Rather than procuring aircrafts, jets, or weapons, arms, etc., I think it's much more wise to invest prosperity and regional stability. So peace is much better for prosperity. Another issue that I will raise, we have commonalities. We have shared more than any other nation. My dear friend Constantinos may call it as baklavas, but I say baklava, only S. Well, it's a richness. At least we taste it. Or kadayif or kadayıfi, the same thing. İmam bayıldı or bayıldı, the same thing. Our cultures are the same because we shared 500 years. I believe that this micro understanding may promote macro outcomes. So that's why we should focus on, like again, the level up. Rather than being stick to the problems, we have to level up the game just to, identify probabilities within optimism, by the way. Then we can consolidate and discuss the problems with a positive mood, and then we can solve it, I believe. So I want to leave it here. Thank you for the participation. Thank you, Bilgehan, for the moderation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Murat Aslan. A lot of, again, important points. You think this is the rapprochement between Turkey and Greece is not only good for these two countries, but for the wider region. And you actually delineated the things that both sides should and the things that they should not. And you argue that perceptions matter in this, and you drew attention to the difference between Greece and Turkey when it comes to perceptions of one another. When the two countries have tensions between them, it is not only consequential for both countries, but for European Union and NATO alliance. And most of the time, it is the third countries, other countries, that are benefiting from the tension between Turkey and Greece. So we have to be aware of that. And you mentioned the importance of micro and meso level, let's say, contact. So people-to-people interaction is very crucial in this. and we are expecting a spillover effect in this positive atmosphere. And we should create what we already inherited from our ancestors for this relations, and certain problems should be left to oblivion, such as Cyprus and sovereignty, that we cannot agree on, and there should be lessons learned from the year of 2020, when the escalation was at the highest. Rather than procuring new fighter jets and new military equipment, we should invest in our prosperity, and again, as a facilitating quality or factor in the bilateral relations, we have a lot of commonalities, a shared culture, and we are hoping that these will be the let's say protective layer of this rapprochement. And you are also hopeful that micro level engagements and micro level mechanisms can create macro level results. Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to Sean Mathews. Sean Mathews is a journalist working for Middle East Eye, covering Middle East, North Africa, and also this region. And Sean Mathews, we would like to hear your perspective as a journalist on this positive atmosphere experienced in Turkish-Greek relations. The floor is yours.
First, I have to say thanks for having me on. It's good to see Murat again, very good friend. It's been too long since we spoke. And to be on with Dr. Filis, another good friend, and to join the ambassador. So yeah, I'll try and give a perspective as a journalist from my conversations here in Athens. And then I'll also try and give a perspective, I guess, as the resident American on the panel. I was in New York for the General Assembly. I was recently in Washington, so I can kind of give some thoughts about how Congress and the U.S. see Greek-Turkish relations at the moment, but then also in the context of the wider region, which I think is important. So I spoke with both Greek and Turkish officials before the seminar here about Erdogan's visit, and there is a cautious optimism. But I think what's important to note is that there have been so many false starts in kind of a detente between Greece and Turkey in recent years. We remembered after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, right? Mitsotakis made that famous visit to Turkey, and there was talk that now would be the moment for Greece and Turkey to kind of have a fresh start, and that fell apart. So, diplomats that I speak with here, they cite that as an example. So I think it's, it's important to curb your optimism. As a journalist covering Greece and Turkey in the context of the wider region, I think what's been interesting to see is how Greece is now kind of being brought in as this additional country that Turkey has looked to mend fences with. In the course of roughly the last 2 years, Erdogan has visited Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt's new ambassador to Turkey arrived this year and presented his credentials. Turkey and Israel, right up until the outbreak of the war in Gaza, were working on mending ties. But it was an open question whether Greece would kind of be swept up in that thaw in relations that Ankara was pursuing with its neighbors and in the near abroad. I think what's important to note, one kind of interesting fact, is that here in Athens, Greek Deputy Foreign Minister Alexandra Papadopoulos kind of caused a bit of a stir when she discussed the war in Gaza and its impact on Greek-Turkish ties right ahead of Erdogan's visit, because she said the war would actually be a positive for the two countries. I think, some people were skeptical about that, but in the weeks that have passed, I think it's, it has borne out to be somewhat true that, the war has helped, I think, Greece and Turkey kind of, come together, even though they've taken really polar opposite sides to the conflict. That's because there's no core competing interests between Greece and Turkey in Gaza. It's not like Libya where you had competing maritime claims. So, Erdogan has, fully backed Hamas. He's called them a Mujahideen fighting force, whereas Greece has labeled them a terrorist. I mean, the most polar opposite kind of, stances you could see have come out of Athens and Ankara on the war as neighbors. But at the same time, there's been no real clash over it, again, because no one has any really core interest at stake on the ground in Gaza like they did in Libya. So I think that was important to note. And that, other thing that's happened from this conflict is that the war has perhaps shored up expectations in Ankara and Athens about regional dynamics. I cover the Middle East in relation to Greece and Turkey. And one of the main concerns that you hear from Greek diplomats has always been what would happen, right, if Turkey and Israel had a rapprochement. The conflict has really solidified, I think, this new alliance between Greece and Israel in the Eastern Mediterranean. And it showed that that Turkey and Israel are always going to be kind of, spotty partners. And that as long as Erdogan is, leading Turkey, there's going to be tensions between Israel because of the position that he has staked out for the Palestinian cause, which I think he, firmly believes in. But I guess to get back to this visit, as so many of the other speakers have said, yeah, we should expect really small confidence-building measures, cooperation on tourism, the economy. I think migration, I know Dr. Filis mentioned that. That is a very important point for Greece and Turkey. There were rumors that Erdogan was going to visit Thrace before his visit. That did not bear out. And I think that was a positive, honestly, for Greece and Turkey. I think for both sides. When we're talking about de-escalation, when we're talking about a thaw, I think Thrace is one of those issues with the Muslim minority that is better for Greece and Turkey to kind of, put aside as they focus on those smaller confidence-building measures like tourism and the economy. I would say the most tangible signs of improved relations have actually already been migration. Greek officials have noted about a 60% drop over the last 2 months in illegal immigrants arriving at Greek islands, and they have credited that with the Turkish Coast Guard. So, that is tangible proof of the relations having an impact on the region. And, Greek officials acknowledging that and owning that before President Erdogan's visit. Again, going back to the economy, the reports recently that Greece wants to make it easier for Turkish citizens to come to the Aegean Islands. So they're planning to renew kind of temporary visas. The ambassador mentioned vacationing on the Greek islands. Dr. Filis mentioned economic cooperation, as did Murat. I was in Chios for a reporting trip in August, and it was packed with Greek tourists. The port was very crowded with Greek tourists. And, they say it's cheaper to vacation on Chios than it is to vacation in Alajati. So yeah, those are positives that I think will be built on in this meeting. And things like the continental shelf, things like the Muslim minority, delimitation of economic zones, that's not even on the table. No one's expecting that. But again, I think if we look towards kind of, confidence building measures and stabilizing ties, that's probably a benefit for Greece and Turkey, actually, because that's something they can work towards. I would agree with Dr. Filis that we're not in a rapprochement. As a journalist covering this, I haven't heard anyone mention that to me, diplomats on either side. No one has said that. It is really a detente, I guess, a thaw in relations. Looking ahead, what I would say in terms of, why this is playing out and why it's important for both countries, for Turkey, I think to mend ties with Greece, which is an EU member state, it's in the EU. The Mitsotakis government is very well received in Brussels. It's very, very well received in Washington, especially. Turkey can't ignore that. This is not the same Greece that Erdogan visited in 2017 during the financial crisis. If you talk with Congress, if you talk with U.S. officials, if you talk with other European officials, they like the government in Athens currently. They really do. And that's something that I think Turkey is very cognizant of. And as Turkey looks to build ties with the West, again, in a sense, Greece is an easy win, actually, because there are a lot of places where Greece and Turkey can work together on. And they do have a shared culture. They do have shared interests. And they can put aside kind of these bigger concerns like the continental shelf and EEZs to mend fences. Whether that's lasting or whether that's short term, I don't know. And I don't know if I can predict that. I think, moving ahead, a key test that's going to come up for Greek-Turkish ties, however, is this F-16 deal. Sweden has said that Turkey promised to ratify its accession to NATO in the coming weeks. And that file is sitting in Turkish parliament. If and when, I would expect it's a question of when, not if, Sweden gets into NATO, the next question is going to turn to, the U.S. notifying Congress about the sale of F-16s to Turkey, which President Biden has said that he would do for all intents and purposes. He wants to see the sale through. At that stage, I think it's going to come down to how Greece responds to the sale of F-16s. And that's kind of a good marker to watch for, I think, for all the viewers to see how serious this rapprochement is, if it can get beyond tourism and, small-scale economic measures to things like F-16s, which, both Greece and Turkey do care about. And don't forget that it was in 2022, right, when Mitsotakis visited the U.S. He gave that speech to Congress, warning against arms sales to Turkey. That relations really snowballed after then. Tensions ratcheted up. We almost got back to 2020 levels. Diplomats that I speak with say that it is likely that, you know, there could be a change in the way the F-16 sale is perceived. And I think Turkey also recognizes that it has to give something on this. They're not going to say it, but I think in Washington, that's how it's viewed, especially since February. There have been no overflights over Greek Aegean islands. That's a key marker, I think, that everyone in Congress is watching for, the lawmakers. You know, again, it's one of those things that officials aren't going to say out loud, but everyone is watching for that. So that's a give to Greece, and that's something that Turkey recognizes that I think it needs to do in order for that F-16 sale to be more palatable in Congress with the Greek lobby and with Greece. So that's a key marker, like I said, that I would watch for. But again, I don't think you can underestimate the importance of Greek-Turkish ties kind of thawing. Again, not a rapprochement, but a thaw in ties when we think about how Turkey is trying to mend relations with the West in Erdogan's new term in office. You know, the war against Kurdish militants in Syria, that's a tough nut for Erdogan to crack, right? That has always riled Congress. That has always riled the U.S. No one expects Turkey to move on that, because Turkey has laid down clear red lines on that. You know, I think Greece is one of these issues where it's easier for Turkey to make movement. They have a very willing partner with Greece, right? The Mitsotakis government has no interest in tensions inflaming. You know, Greece is the economic success story of Europe right now. It's the second fastest growing economy. There's no reason for Greece to want to ratchet up any tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean, none whatsoever. They wouldn't benefit from it at all. So Turkey does have a willing partner in Greece if it's trying to kind of get this F-16 deal over the table and move in a way towards the West while still holding firm to issues like the Palestinian cause. So that's kind of what I would watch for coming out of this meeting.
Thank you very much, Sean. You mentioned your let's say reflection based on your contact with diplomats. And you talked about the cautious optimism felt by the American officials, and he also warns the viewers or us to curb the optimism. And you mentioned the Deputy Foreign Minister's comments about the likelihood of the war in Gaza having a positive impact for bilateral relations, and it's kind of a proven, let's say, correct, because both sides don't have a competing interest at the core of this issue, unlike they did in the Libyan case. You expect small confidence-building measures, and you mentioned like tourism and economy. You said there is a tangible, let's say, improvements in the decrease of illegal migrants. And Greek authorities attribute this to the Coast Guard's performance on Turkish side, and there are other, let's say, positives, making it easier for Turkish businessmen, Turkish people to visit Greek islands. And you also mentioned about kind of a driver of this mobilization as part of the reason why there is motivation to let's say, engage in a thaw in relations. Turkey is aware of the fact that Mitsotakis is well received in Brussels and Washington. It is not the Greece of 2017. It is the second fastest growing economy in Europe. And Erdogan's government, especially after the elections, wants to build ties or mend ties with Europe or West. And you think Greece is an easy win, and you think there will be things to watch as a marker whether this rapprochement will be sustainable or long term, such as the let's say green lighting of the sale of F-16 from the United States to Turkey. How Greece will receive this will be a very decisive, let's say, marker of this process. Thank you very much. We ended the first, let's say, session of this panel discussion. Now we are entering the Q&A session. We have slightly less than 10 minutes, so I will ask all speakers to answer in 2 or 3 minutes in their answers. And I would like to ask the first question to Dr. Constantinos Filis about what do you think about the risks of other European countries within the European Union to derail the ongoing, let's say, Turkish-Greece rapprochement, with an expectation that Turkish-Greek bilateral cordial relations is not good for other countries' interests in Europe?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think that there is any European country. Most probably, I presume that you might have France in mind, given the military agreement, the defense agreement that was signed between Greece and France. But France, in my view, approaches Turkey as a competitor, not only in the Mediterranean, but in Africa as well. And that is an issue that we take into consideration, the fact that it seems that Ankara and Paris are competing forces in the Mediterranean and in Africa. But of course, that does not affect our policy vis-à-vis Turkey. Again, as I said before, geography is destiny. And Turkey is our neighbor. I can understand, because we have our reservations as well with regards to some moves that Turkey, some steps that Turkey is taking in distancing itself from Europe, in retreating even institutionally, and not only from the so-called European model. But on the other hand, if we want to be fair, we must stress that it was France and Germany back in 2004 to 2007 that made it clear to Turkey that they didn't want Turkey to become a full member of the European family. And it's a good thing for Greece that Helsinki preceded in 1999, because you may recall that in the 90s, it was Greece to blame for the termination of accession talks, or for the fact that the accession talks between Turkey and the European Union were not starting. Actually, it was not Greece to blame. That was very convenient for other European powers. To make a long story short, I don't think that there is any European member, even those who sell weapons to Greece and Turkey, which is interested in seeing any tension between Greece and Turkey. Let me remind you that we represent the southeastern flank of NATO, and the most European member states are also members of NATO. So I don't think that there is any appetite for that. On the contrary, the fact that now there is a discussion about visa liberalization, which of course in our case is easier than it is on a European level, on a pan-European level, for reasons that you understand, and that we have also there is a need to renew and modernize the customs union agreement that is there since the 31st of December of 1995, and we are about to enter 2024. Greece can really be, in that respect, helpful for Turkey, and Turkey has to realize that Greece is not an enemy. On the contrary, Greece can play a positive role in European affairs, provided that Turkey, of course, respects Greece's sovereignty and sovereign rights, because there is a precondition. So, last word on my side. Most European countries, namely Germany, Italy, Spain, and others, that have already invested in Turkey in different and many ways, they prefer rapprochement and a cordial relationship between Greece and Turkey, understanding the dire effect any kind of conflict or confrontation between Athens and Ankara might have on a regional basis. And again, That's the last thing we need, even if we didn't have the wars, now that we have two wars undergoing in Ukraine and Gaza Strip, and a very unstable environment anyways in the wider periphery of the Mediterranean.
Thank you very much, Constantinos. Filis. And I would like to ask the other question to Ambassador Uluç Özülker. Do you see risks in derailing this rapprochement efforts currently going on between Turkey and Greece? If they are, what are they that both sides should pay attention and avoid?
I think that personally speaking, I need to emphasize another point in that respect. The world in the 21st century is rapidly changing, and we are no more witnessing what we lived in the 20th century nowadays. And there are bloody wars everywhere, and particularly from the American side, now Ukraine, then China, and actually the Middle East. All these are bringing to this world nothing but bloody fighting, and the peace is not at sight. So in the 21st century, there is an important change, actually. The first one is that we used in the 20th, we're speaking of NATO, we're speaking of friendship, of a close rapprochement between the countries in that respect, etc. But in reality, the 21st century is bringing to us a new perspective. We don't have anymore inside NATO an enemy like the Warsaw Pact members. It's finished. Instead, you now have a division in the world between the West, the so-called democracies, and the East. The Eurasian effect is now on the agenda. And the fighting or the arms wrestle is going on, actually, between Asia and the rest of the West. So the European Union also is not helping solve the problems that we're facing within the 21st century, because they're not united at all. And I believe that in the Western world, except the full power that the United States is using in all respect, everything is going bad. I mean, economically speaking, the unanimity, the NATO, European Union, everything in there. I mean, the atmosphere is not a good one, simply and shortly. So as such, when you look to Turkey, the geostrategic importance of Turkey, it's in the middle of the world, and the world where all these this fighting is going on. The one who loses Turkey will unfortunately lose its power as well. So as for Greece and Turkey in that respect, we are two countries living, I mean, two neighbors in the Aegean, in the Eastern Mediterranean, etc. If we can manage it and we start walking hand to hand, hand in hand, towards a more peaceful future, it's not only Turkey who will have a lot more profit out of that, but also Greece, because with the neighborhood and as much the relationship with Turkey will bring to Greece an important, how would I say, an important development, politically, economically, and otherwise. And this will help not only the two countries, but the world as a whole. So my understanding is that for Greece, instead of looking forward to get a support from its NATO members or the other European Union states, etc., for whom I don't have much trust, I would say, because whenever there is something different or difficult, I can see that everybody is looking for its own interests and not for the sake that they're not following the sake of the community as a whole. So if Turkey and Greece comes together more and more and settles a good friendship among them, it will be profitable for all what I have tried to explain this time, for both countries, not only the countries, but for the whole region. And why not? When I consider the problem in the Middle East, the success of a peaceful settlement around and inside the limits where we are living at, the two countries together. This is my understanding.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. We reached the end of this panel discussion together. I would like to thank each of the participants for their valuable insights and interventions. It has been a very lively and informative debate, and of course, there have been many important points. The bottom line is we have to manage our expectations from this summit that will be held tomorrow, and also the subsequent, let's say, positive atmosphere between the countries. It will take active input from both sides, and there are all the reasons to invest in this positive atmosphere and constructive relations for both countries, and very few, let's say, incentives to derail this relationship and escalate in fashions that we experienced, such as the period between 2019 and 2022. So with this, I will end this session. I would like to also thank our viewers for their patience, for their attention, and till next time, I would like to say goodbye.